Hmm, if someone is doing too much, if they're making me uncomfortable, how do I process this? What do I do about that? I don't know what to do, but what would Tyra do? That is what we're going to be talking about in this particular episode. We are in part two of our probably three-part series on the ANTM docu-series, and we will be talking a little bit about consent. But first, the intro. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Daily Donna. I am your host, Dr. Donna, and I am a sex and relationship therapist in Washington, D.C. metro area, the author of Drink Water and Mind Your Business, A Black Woman's Guide to Unlearning the BS and Healing Self-Esteem. And because I'm a sex therapist, I like to think that makes me at least a little bit qualified to talk about consent. And that is what we are talking about today because, baby, what would Tyra do? That was the question that was asked, but the answer may not have been quite correct. And as with yesterday, where we talked a little bit about what an apology is first, I thought that it would be important for us to start with the definition of consent. So consent, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is to give assent or approval. That means say yes. Now, the way that Planned Parenthood says it, now they do talk about it with regard to the S.E.X, but it is about actively agreeing with someone and lets the person know what is wanted. It shows that you respect how the other person feels. This should not be confused with relenting. Consenting is enthusiastic. It's voluntary. You get to use your FREIES. So if you've never heard of FREIES, that means that it is freely given, it's reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. Relenting, on the other hand, is really just sort of giving into pressure, coercion, or someone else's persistence. And we're going to talk about what, for me, did not look very much like consent on the show. So, because let's get that done up front. Was there consent in a lot of the stuff that we saw where we're having conversations and questions? No, there wasn't. And that is the conversation that I want to have. So I was thinking about how to start this off, and I thought we could just start with Shandy, right? Shandy, I think that was season 6. Shandy is the one where they made it seem like she cheated on her boyfriend. And I'm not saying whether or not she did. I'm not casting any judgment one way or the other on that. But it was it was shown to us as though that's what she wanted. And then to learn on the back end that she was too drunk to consent. See, that's the thing about consent. It can only be given by people who are sober. It can only be given by people who are in their right minds. It can only be given by people who know what they want, are able to express what they want to people who are listening for what it is that they want. Now, I know what Tyra would say, but what about the times? We're not talking about 2026 where we have a better understanding of consent. We're talking about back then. Heard. Beloved, heard. And someone doing something to your body that you don't want done to your body has never been right. It has only been endured, mostly because a lot of women in particular were not in positions of power to do something about it. Wait, wasn't Tyra in a position of power? We're going to get into that. But where it comes to Shandy, she was drunk. It means that she can't consent. That's called sexual assault. That is not, because it's not freely given, it's not informed. And how enthusiastically can a drunk person consent? That ain't, basically what I'm saying is, it's not consent. Now, where we come to the other forms of consent, because I know that a lot of us, we think of consent and we think sexual consent. We think of it in sexual situations. And Shandy's is very much a sexual situation, right? One that I would even say is dubious, right? So I would say that's dubious consent, where it's like, well, she's not in her right mind, so she can't really give it. Which doesn't feel all that dubious to me, but let's go with it. Let's go with it. Let's talk about the other areas of consent. We had Danielle and Kenya. Now, with Danielle, because I want to say that she was before Kenya. Look, I don't even know. If you know, tell me in the comments. Where it comes to Danielle specifically, they were like, hey, we're going to take you all to go get them teeth done. So you get your first introduction of a more medical type of makeover hitting ANTM. And that was when, what is homegirl's name? I can see her face, but I can't remember her name. It was like, yes, we're going to go ahead and get them teeth fixed, get that snaggle tooth, right? And they had an expectation that Danielle would want to have her gap closed. But homegirl didn't want her gap closed. She liked her gap. And as Tyra would often say on the show, that it is your job to constantly be studying what is within the industry already, which means that Tyra and the people who are in the industry would also be well aware that there are famous models with a gap. And yet they made it a condition of Danny staying to remove that gap, that if she wanted to stay, she had to let it go. Now, some people would say she consented. She said yes. But what I said, there's a difference between consent and relent. Being pressured, given an ultimatum, being in a sense coerced is not consent. That means that she didn't consent, she relented. If the option was go home to where she didn't have much going, where she wasn't sure what she was going to do next, where she knew what she wanted and it was over here, not over there, it's either you get your dreams or I snatch your dreams away. She decided that she was going to give up something that she liked about herself, that she loved about herself, that she wanted to keep about herself so that she could maintain her role where she was. She didn't consent. She relented. There's a difference. And part of the reason that I wanted to bring that up and make sure that we had this conversation today is because I'm willing to bet there's somewhere in your life where you thought you may have consented, but in reality, you relented. You gave up. You gave in. They were very persistent and it was too much. They were dogged. I want you to know that it's okay that you did. When someone is that persistent, when they're that coercive, when they're in your face in that way, it is hard to constantly say no. Sometimes you get tired and just like, man, go on, do what you want to do then. And that was sort of the space that I felt like we found Danielle. She didn't want to give up the gap in her teeth. She was told she had no choice because they wanted to go for a specific aesthetic. And low key, high key, I think that they wanted to get rid of something that she loved to see how much she wanted to be there, to make it part of the narrative, that people want this so bad that we can make someone's dreams come true and turn someone else's reality into a little bit of a nightmare. That part for me is what was sad. Now, the third instance of dubious, not even dubious consent, just no consent at all, was Kenya. And so for a little bit of background, in case you didn't know or you didn't watch this piece, Kenya was being very much pursued by one of the male models that they had assigned for the shoot. And he was pressing your girl down bad, which makes sense. She fine. She fine, right? He was being a little bit too persistent because she already said no. And I don't know how many ways a person could say, no, I'm not interested. No, thank you. Before it gets through your skull that they are just uninterested. She still had to pose with this person that was already making things a little awkward and difficult over yonder, right? So she gets up there and she's doing the thing and he's moaning in her ear and touching on her body. and she is uncomfortable. So she said that she thought to herself, what would Tyra do? Tyra would respectfully stop the shoot, announce that she is uncomfortable, and give everybody an opportunity to make it right. Was she right? If you said yes, you are dead wrong. Come on now. I said, what would Tyra do? Tyra wouldn't do it for you. Tyra might do it for herself. Tyra's not doing that for you. Tyra would have also had to be there in order to maybe enact it. And maybe, and you know what? I don't want to take it away from Tyra because she might have done or said something different. She might have. I don't know. And I don't remember if she was there. I remember that Nigel was there though. And Nigel kind of looked at her like, the audacity of you to think that you are in the position to stop this shoot. And that's the other piece I wanted to talk to you about. Power. Where power is present, consent can often become a little bit more difficult. And when I say power, I'm talking about power among various lines. But in this case, you have Miss J, Mr. J, Nigel, and Tyra, and whatever rotating judge all had power over whether or not these girls will continue in this competition. That's one. Number two, going out on a limb to say that they were all just a little bit older than the people that were there. The average age of the ANTM contestant was in that early 20 range, like between 20 and 22, I want to say, going as young as 18 and as old as 25. Tyra was 29 when the show was, born into its inception, right? And here it is, you have these basically just, some of them fresh out of high school girls at a time in their lives where they had to still ask to do things like go to the bathroom, where they were still being told to go talk to an adult, right? To talk to a trusted adult. And I don't know about you, but at my big age, I'm still looking for the adultier adult in the room, someone to give me a little bit of direction. So you have these extra young people who are technically still in the age of adolescence, right? So adolescence, according to Erickson back in the day, goes up to age 18. However, new studies using brain scans specifically have shown that adolescence actually goes on quite a bit longer than that and can go up to age 32. Right? So you got a bunch of people in their adolescence running around here feeling adult-like with adultier adults who have power over whether or not they continue in the competition, who are positioned as having power over whether or not they get to have a career, who are also in this world regularly of TV and movie stars and, people with names and sort of industry power, who are able to create the idea of this is just the way it goes. Plus, you also have star power with, like with Tyra, with Miss J, with Mr. J, with Nigel, at the very least as things go on, right? Like even if at first Tyra was mistaken for Beyonce, eventually Tyra became known as Tyra. And I'm saying that all of these things make it so that consent looks a little bit more dubious. It is harder to consent when people are taught to relent to those in positions of power. It takes time, energy, knowing who you are, liking who you are, and being in the right environments for you to be able to make choices for yourself that are based off what you know about you and what you know you can handle. But when you have a group of women between 18 and 25 fighting for one prize, and the people in the positions of power have an agenda that is completely separate from you, now consent looks different. It looks different because I told you that it had to be freely given and specific. And I would tell you that as a person who had to get past the institutional review board for a dissertation, it also often needs to be informed. It means that people have to know exactly what they're signing up for, which means you can't hold that information back. So if you know, for example, that getting on this show and winning might not actually be the thing to help you to launch a career, for example, Some would say that you're supposed to disclose that, right? Like, so that you can actually freely give your consent, knowing that you may not get out of this thing what it is that you desire, even if you do the work to win. Some people would say that maybe you would have to have an idea of the fact that they intend to use your trauma as fodder in these episodes, and they're going to make it seem like it's coincidental when in actuality it's not, right? Like, that's part of it as well. I'm saying that consent for this show, like your student loans, is dubious at best. Yes, you're technically an adult by some arbitrary age that some arbitrary person decided to arbitrarily pick. But according to your brain, no, you're not. According to your brain, you're not yet an adult. You're still in adolescence. According to your brain, you may not have a full understanding of what it is that you're going for, what it is that you're competing for. And that's why I also brought up this piece about the objectives, the goals, because the goals were different, right? The stated goals versus the lived goals. The stated goal of the show, I mean, other than to get back at the fashion industry for booting Miss Tyra out, one of the stated goals was to slam the door open, right? To slam it wide open so that all of these people who look different can walk through, so that they can show that everyone can be a model. We just have to make more room. Right? That was the stated goal. The lived goal is that's not exactly what happened. Like, maybe a little bit, right? We got to give credit where credit is due. There was some stuff. There were some people that were able to build a platform from this. But at what cost ends up being one of my questions, but that's a conversation for another day. You have the goal of the network. Their goal is to entertain, to have people be on TV, and to maintain a viewership. And then you have Tyra's stated goal, opening the door, versus Tyra's lived goal to make sure that Tyra was okay. And then you have the permanent cast goal, stay on this gravy train as long as you can stay in order to make this here money, honey. And then you have the goal of the girls, which goes with what Tyra originally stated, which is to slam the door open. These are the girls who have the goal to be the one to help the door not only get open and stay open, which means that you can take their dreams, hold them in front of them and say, close your gap or have your dream. And that is how you get relenting versus consenting. That is how you know that the consent was dubious at best. Someone said yes, but it was more like, all right, damn. If you're gonna be in my face, if you're gonna stop me from this thing, I can see myself doing this work. I know that this is what I want. I want it with my heart. I want it with my soul. I don't think that they knew that that was probably the cost, one soul. So in reality, it was an illusion of choice. You didn't have a choice on what you were going to or not going to do. You would do what they wanted you to do, or you would get put off. And the thing is, you might still get put off, right? So I'm just saying that, like, where it comes to consent, there really was none. It was dubious in some instances at best, non-existent, and violated at worst. The thing about consent is that women are often socialized to go along to get along, to sort of go with the flow, which I want to say even Kenya talked about, like this idea of just like, do I go with the flow or what would Tyra do? Right? And I think even Nigel may have said something about like the expectation of going along with the flow of the shoot. Or maybe it was the photographer for that particular shoot. But the point is that going with the flow only works so far. You have to know exactly where the flow is taking you. And a lot of you will say that you are a go with the flow type of person. A go with the flow type of person is usually a person who is not paying attention enough to actively consent. Going with the flow means you didn't choose, it chose you. It means that someone else presented you with an option and sometimes with an ultimatum and you relented, which is not the same thing as saying that you consented. Consent is not a difficult concept, but when someone wants something that you don't want, when they have a goal that you don't have, and they have kept that goal hidden from you, it means that You don't even have all the information so that you can make a choice, an informed choice, where you understand what's at stake, how they might mischaracterize you, what role they may cast you into, and how they may intend to use you for their own ends. Consent in show business seems very tricky indeed, because I don't know that a lot of people are being upfront, because they're mostly just trying to make sure that they get what they want by any means necessary. I believe Shandy said it, right? Like, she was ready to leave the show, and all of a sudden they had a phone and were able to let her talk to her partner to say, hey, my bad, I cheated, to be able to have that conversation. But also said that, like, well, we're going to film it. I recognize that someone apologized for having done it. But remember what I said yesterday, an apology must also be followed with changed behavior. All right, y'all, you are the bee's knees. I will see you tomorrow for another Daily Donna with me, Dr. Donna. Remember, I am a therapist. I'm not your therapist. Make sure that you act accordingly. And keep in mind that I do discourse, that's conversation, not disrespect. You know what that is. We will be closing out our ANTM series tomorrow with a conversation on self-esteem. All right. Until then, bye.